How does a director who redefined zombie cinema with Train to Busan make a horror movie where the world-ending pathogen literally looks like pulsating white bodily fluid? Hit like and subscribe, and let's dive into Colony. When a rogue scientist releases a mutating slime mold pathogen inside a Seoul skyscraper, a disgraced professor and a building security guard are locked inside a biohazard killing floor. Trapped under military quarantine, the survivors must climb the high-rise floor by floor while the infected share sensory data to counter every move. We were promised claustrophobic tactical chess match against a luring horde. Instead, Colony trades actual suspense for melodramatic tropes, unlikable characters making suicidal choices, and a constant river of white goo. Let's just get this out of the way. It looks like cum, okay? These are cum zombies. Then he followed up with the sequel to it called Peninsula, which was a massive CGI bloated disappointment. It was pretty terrible. And I hate to say it, but Colony kind of proves that Train to Busan might have been the lightning in a bottle moment for him rather than just a baseline of quality. And I think this is where he goes wrong, because it seems like he's repeating his worst habits, which is like relying on high concept gimmicks without the narrative engine or the emotional grounding to back them up, like Train to Busan. And with Colony, just from the start, we are starting to get weak characterizations in here. Every person on screen is reduced to like a flat single note trope. We have the main character who is there for a job interview to meet the CEO of this company. Of course, she's a scientist, so her entire role is merely to deliver like clunky scientific exposition dumps to kind of explain the zombie hive mind mechanics to the other characters and to the audience. Then we have the security guard and his wheelchair-bound sister. Of course, his entire personality begins and ends with protecting my sister. Can't trust anybody. Then we have like these three teenagers and two are assholes to this one. One's a guy, one's a girl. They're both bullies to this other girl here. And the bully girl is always fucking up and getting people killed, like stepping on a can, or everyone's got to rescue her. I'm like, just leave her behind. There's like 3 or 4 different scenes in this movie where she does some dumb shit and really doesn't add anything to the movie. And again, there's not a whole lot to say with characterization in this. We have a cop who is trying to find the guy who injected him with the cure. There is one guy in the building who has the cure, and he's the one that started this whole thing. And we have a cop character who is trying his best to get this guy and then bring him out so they can stop this whole thing. That's the one character that has a little bit of characterization in this, because his character goes a route I wasn't expecting. I already talked about this, the white slime mold that the zombies use for communication with them, which, I mean, it sounds like it heavily borrows from The Last of Us. I mean, more like the TV series, because it wasn't in the games, where the infected would communicate with each other through like the roots. But once these people are infected and turn into zombies, they start literally vomiting up like thick pulsating white fluid to connect their organic network all over the building. I mean, this movie is fucking disgusting looking, so do not eat anything while watching this. But I kind of do like how the zombies work in here. I mean, it's got this sort of fun body horror aspect to it. Like the zombies are just physically crawling over each other to form like a massive multi-limbed structural swarm monster that is visually pretty off-putting. And I think another reason I didn't really care for Colony, because it just looks flat, like digital lighting and the whole Doom-Worry building strips away the claustrophobic dread. And that should be like a defining high-rise lockdown narrative, you know? Everything was just like too brightly lit and looked cheap. It just looked pretty cheap, which I'm sure they were just trying to show off the zombie effects, which were effective. I had to talk about the runtime, and it's almost like a repetitive thing. It's like the survivors hide, the zombies adapt, character makes a dumb mistake, escape to the next floor. In this movie's runtime is like 2 hours. I'm like, this is a premise for like a 90-minute movie, especially when you have like characters that you don't have any really strong feelings towards, or you're not even rooting for. And I mentioned the character who infected the whole building and put the cure inside of himself. His whole like bioterror attack feels kind of disconnected from his actual screen time and his personal depth. He's a crazy guy, you know? Even though it gives a little bit more reasoning in the third act, it still feels pretty convoluted. He's more like a walking plot device rather than like a compelling threat. The main character is Jun Ji-hyun, who's making her 11-year return to feature film since 2015's Assassination. Made like the intentional choice to tone down her physical action beats since she's just a disgraced professor, which I think it kind of backfires because she's kind of stuck in this exposition only role in a lot of ways. But other people liked it. This landed a midnight screening slot at the 2026 Cannes Film Festival, complete with a 7-minute standing ovation and an appearance by jury president Park Chan-wook. I don't know if I ever go to one of these festivals and just stand there clapping for like 7 or 10 or 30 minutes like it sounds like they do at these festivals. It sounds ridiculous. And Yeon Sang-ho, he did a press tour. He made comments about the hive-mind infection as a direct allegory to modern internet echo chambers and AI algorithms, where individuals surrender critical thinking to collective outrage networks. That seems a little bit of a stretch with this movie, because I think like his thematic ambition, I think it gets a little lost in the weight of like just generic zombie tropes and body horror schlock. Now I'm going to talk about the ending and kind of like explore what he was going for with this. If you haven't seen the movie, go down in the chapter below to check out my spoiler-free overall thoughts and score. So the guy that started the infection injects himself with this prime organism, turning his own central nervous system into like a walking router for the entire hive mind so he can control them. He infects like the incoming military SWAT teams and turns them into heavily armored shock troopers. He breaches a perimeter and floods the streets of Seoul with multi-thousand zombie swarm. The disgraced professor has a countermeasure. She knows that this army of undead, they function like ants, relying entirely on a shared chemical and visual targets tracking rather than individual sight. So the horde prioritizes anyone wearing that specific mycelium scented white jacket. She takes that jacket and throws it on a zombie in the middle of the street. So the hive receives two conflicting inputs: attack the target in the jacket versus the target is a node of the hive. So the horde enters this like real world biological phenomenon known as ant mill, a death spiral where thousands of ants follow each other's trails in endless blind circles until they literally die of exhaustion. So basically, the guy controlling them has to step into the eye of the spinning horde to rip the jacket off that zombie. The disgraced professor uses the sensory noise to slide under the wrecked bus. Resetting the horde gets blindsided by the bright LED bus advertisement and surges forward and shoves the bad guy straight into a burning wreckage, incinerating the host node. So the moment he dies, the central signal vanishes. Every infected across Seoul instantly freezes in place like a stone statue, turning the city into a silent, frozen graveyard. So that character's bioweapon attack was never a random attack of terrorism. It was a targeted, deeply personal revenge plot against that disgraced professor. Because years earlier, that professor acted as an academic whistleblower, exposing his father for corporate embezzlement. The public scandal destroyed his family and drove his father to suicide. So that whistleblowing ruined his career, but he still blamed her. So he built this whole trap specifically to force her to watch the collapse of society before dying at the hands of his creation. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? It's a little bit overkill. But I guess you can tie that back to the director's commentary on modern digital culture. The infected represent an outrage-driven hive mind that has outsourced its critical thinking to a central algorithm. And like with the ant mill, feeding conflicting, polarizing data into a hyper-connected network creates an infinite feedback loop that crashes the system. The vaccine was never created, leaving the dormant pathogen sitting inside thousands of frozen citizens. The disgraced professor walks through the statue-filled streets. A zombie's head twitches and its eyes refocus right before you cut the black, with some sequel bait in there. So I guess the algorithm didn't die, it just rebooted. So Colony has moments of grotesque body horror flair and a genuinely clever biological climax, but it gets completely bogged down by the generic tropes, degrading character decisions, and a flat visual style that wastes its own claustrophobic premise. Yeon Sang-ho reaches for lofty allegories about modern algorithms, but buries them under a pile of formulaic K-drama, melodrama, and endless rivers of white goo. I think this is for like the die-hard body horror completionists or K-cinema obsessives who want to see Jun Ji-hyun on the big screen again. Anyone hoping for the raw kinetic magic or emotional gut punch of Train to Busan will walk away deeply disappointed. So I'm giving Colony a 2 out of 5. But what did you think of Colony? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and consider subscribing. If you want to support the channel a little further, hit that join button down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.